Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we're going to be doing my eyeshadow palette review for September. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the eyeshadow palettes that I tried in September. I think there are 10 of them here, and I've done looks with all of these. I will be inserting those as well as swatches so you can get the full lowdown on what I think of these 10 palettes. In case you're new here, then hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been a makeup reviewer for more than a decade. I love trying eyeshadow palettes as a Catrice and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that sounds like something you would like to get more of, then I hope you would like to consider subscribing. I've tried, I think 10 palettes in September, which is crazy to me. Now I do have to say though, I'm filming this the day I last tried some of these, and one palette I pretty much gave up on a little bit, you could say, because I was trying some palettes and they are all by the same brand. So once I got to the third palette, I was like, I kind of know this formula and I don't feel it's any different from the other two, so I don't need to try every single shade because I feel I've done enough here. But for all of the other palettes, I've tried every single shade. Let me tell you a little bit what we will be talking about. So first, the first brand we're going to be reviewing are some Colourpop palettes. I bought these myself over the springtime when they launched the Lavish palette. So if you know what these are, if you saw my monthly haul a couple of months ago, you may still remember what these are. And around the same time, I think this was like May and June, some brands also sent me some PR. So there is some What's Up Beauty in here, some Alter Ego, and Florasis is in here as well. So those are the 10 palettes we will be reviewing, and I will be starting with the PR gifts first, and then we'll get into the Colourpop stuff. So yes, first things first. I was contacted by What's Up Beauty. I think I'm now on their PR list to ask whether I wanted to try their Geodes collection. This comes with nail polishes as well as some brushes, and the What's Up Beauty brushes are incredibly high quality. I got a couple of those in PR before, and they feel really, really nice. And the good thing was that the brushes they sent me with this collection were actually designed to go better with smaller features and hooded eyes. So I really enjoy seeing so many brands. BK Beauty does this as well. Refer Beauty has a couple where they do smaller brushes that can actually fit if you don't have that much lid space, which is definitely what's going on for me. So the brushes were really lovely, but today we're really reviewing the Geodes eyeshadow palette. I also got some of the nail polishes from this collection, and the nail polishes actually represent some of the colors we get in the palette. I did 2 looks with this, and I'm really, really glad that the brand was so kind to send this to me, because I tried their Desert Monsoon palette last year, and I liked the formula, but the color story was not necessarily my jam. So I did declutter it and gifted it to a friend. But when this launched, I was already like, ooh, that looks really, really pretty. But because What's Up Beauty is based in the United States, and then placing an order for just one palette can get crazy expensive. So I'm really, really happy that they were able to send this to me in PR, because this color story is right up my street. You might think it looks warm-toned, but it really, really isn't. Even the shades in here that look overly warm-toned aren't that warm-toned, and the undertones are really, really cool, especially once you start blending things onto the lid. The thing that makes it look more warm-toned than it actually is that gold reflective background. But if you actually take these shades at face value, it looks like you get these like warm rosy pinks. On me, they pulled more pink than they did orange. They didn't look very peachy. This has a little bit of an orangey flash, but it's that like hot pink with orange duochrome, and that's one of the things I really love about this palette, is that a lot of the shimmers have a shift to them. So they are not necessarily what you see in the pan, and I really like that that was the case for this lighter yellow. It was really, really pretty. I thought it was going to be looking off because yellows and golds can look a little bit differently on my skin tone because I have that cooler undertone, but citrine was really lovely. I also really enjoyed the shade Earth-like. The purples in here are stunning. You get a couple of really good mattes in here that really tie the palette together. I really enjoyed this like ochre-y yellow shade as well. It feels like it's going to be the odd one out, but especially because we get this like cocky green and then this green and this. I filmed a couple of videos with the look I wore that I created with these shades. I don't think I filmed while I was wearing this, but I definitely filmed a couple of videos when I was wearing this palette. If you saw my top 3 in every category videos last week, this is the palette I was wearing, and that green shade was the vibrant green that was popping all over the lid in those videos. I thought it looked stunning, it blended easily, really incredible quality. We get more shimmers than mattes, which is what I prefer. The mattes in here are stunning, they are more cool tone heavy. The green in here has a very gray undertone, so for a cocky green, it's not that very warm tone cocky green, so I really enjoyed it, and this was very successful for me for sure. And then Florasis is one of the palettes that I tried earlier today before I sat down to film and let you know how I feel about these palettes. Florasis is a brand that sent a lot of PR to me in May, and I think I showed you the full lowdown with all of the swatches already in my haul video at the time. And I'm slowly making my way through testing all of these products. I have one of their highlights in my Shop My Stash this month as well. And so far, I mean, of course, Florasis is known for doing incredibly stunning packaging. And sometimes when the packaging is this beautiful, I sometimes feel it's a bit of a distraction to take away from the quality of the product. With Florasis, I feel that that's not the case. The quality is definitely there. It is, though, a different quality than what a lot of Western makeup brands have to offer. And it's also different from what a lot of Western beauty influencers will be raving about. Florasis is a Chinese brand, as far as I know, so they are more tied into the whole Asian beauty vibe, and the Asian vibe is far more natural and sheer and blendable and a wash of color all over the lid, and not the intense full-on glam things that you see a lot in Western makeup. This palette fits that bill really nicely. It's got a good amount of shine, like there are only 2, maybe 3 real mattes in here, but even the things that look very shimmery in this palette are not overly shimmery to the point where it's gonna crease and fall down your eyes. It's not that heavy of a metallic foily finish, which I really enjoy, because as much as I love a very intense high shine shimmer, I don't want that every single day of my life. This color story is not necessarily up my street. As we all know, I love a cool tone, that's just my preference, but as far as a warm tone palette goes, I thought this was really pretty on. Especially these 2 shades really make the palette for me. This sort of like peachy rose gold was really stunning all over the lid. This yellow tone gold as well, even though I'm not a yellow tone lover. It actually reminds me a lot of the citrine shade from the What's Up Beauty palette, where it's just light enough and it doesn't have such an intense like golden yellow undertone. It's more of like a lemony yellow, and that works quite well on me. The shimmers in here are beautiful and can be built up, but where this palette truly stands out and shines are the mattes. These mattes are so incredibly smooth and blendable, and they don't disappear. You know how sometimes mattes can just like dust away into nothing? This shears out so beautifully, and I was really like able to pull up the color towards my brow bone, and it looked soft and diffused, and it wasn't harsh. Even when I blended some of like these deeper shades into the crease shade I was wearing, really lovely. The only thing I wish is that these 2 mattes were more different, because these 2 mattes are simply a little too samey. It's sort of like a rosy terracotta and an orangey terracotta, but terracotta on me isn't necessarily the best thing, and I feel those are interchangeable. This blue-brown shade is really stunning, but I felt that was the letdown of the palette, you could say, because that would have been better if it had a little bit more impact, but it's the same soft, more satiny shimmer texture that we also get in some of the other in some of the other shades. And the biggest drawback, as beautiful as this is, there isn't embossing in every single pan. And of course, you then run the risk as you start using this that the images start to fade. And I feel that that's not necessarily the case. Some of the detail is definitely gone by now from where I've put my brushes in. But that's been the issue for me. Where do I put my brush? Because sometimes I felt that when I put a brush in, that little flakes of product came out because of the fact that there is a embossing there. There's an actual ridge that the brush taps into. So it's very difficult to get an even distribution of color onto your eyeshadow brush to then transfer it to the lids. So because of there's all these lumps and bumps everywhere. Does it look beautiful? Is it very easy to work with shadow? For sure, but I also think that this isn't going to be for everyone. If you like this, then I definitely think you're gonna have to bear in mind that it goes more with a sheer, more wearable look rather than something that's gonna give you full-on glam. And then another brand that contacted me, that sent me some of their products as well, was Alter Ego. And they sent me 3 of their palettes, and I have tried all of the original high-end versions of these palettes before I sat down to try these. Some of these, like these 2 that they dupe, are some of my all-time favorite palettes, and that's why I need to kick off this review by saying, if you were hoping that these Alter Ego palettes were gonna give you Natasha Denona, Huda Beauty, and Anastasia Beverly Hills quality at a cheaper price point, then I'm gonna have to disappoint you, because I don't find this quality comparable to any of those brands. However, if I look at it from the price point perspective, because I think these are all within like the $15 mark, for 15 euros, I would say that these are worth it and you can get the look for less, but please don't expect too much. And that's something that I wanted to preface here before digging into these. I'll make sure when I do an overlay of some of the swatches to have some like comparisons between the shades, because that's another thing that I found here. Even though the looks you can create come really close to what the originals have to offer, I do feel that, especially in the Goddess palette, it's what's on my eyes today actually, I felt the undertones were very different than what we get in the Natasha Denona. But let me talk about each one of these individually and then we can discuss those differences. So the first one I think I tried was the Midsummer, and this is the reason why they sent me the PR, because they only came out with this in like June, July time. This, I mean, the Nouveau palette from ABH is the thing that this is trying to dupe. And this palette, from the way it's been laid out, makes a lot more sense to me than the ABH one. So my hands are now itching to pull apart my ABH palette and to configure it like this. Because this, we have the greeny tones together, we have the warmer tones together, we have the neutrals together, and then we just have the random pops of color that the Nouveau has in the corner. So my brain finds this so much more pleasing than the original Nouveau. I feel that brands do that to try and make it more interesting than it actually is, because I think this way we can see that it's just not that exciting of a palette. Mine did come a little bit cracked. This shade up here is cracking just a little bit. That could be a transit thing, I'm not sure. Could also be a quality thing, but we'll see how it lasts over time. And right from the first usage of the Midsummer palette, is this color story stunning? Yes, but I find that if you're an affordable brand, you should not only just have dupe products. I really appreciate it personally if affordable brands have products that perhaps come close to a formula of a high-end brand, but that they do their own color stories. And Alter Ego, of course, is not known for doing that. They are known for giving you color stories that are really similar to more high-end options. And I just find that not wholly unique or creative, so that's my gripe with this one. My favorite look I did with this were these green tones. Is it incredibly stunning? Yes. But here's the thing, and this goes for all 3 of these palettes. As beautiful as the mattes are, the shimmers in this is where I feel they lack. The shimmers in the ABH, but also in the Natasha Denona and the Huda Beauty, those pretty much go on with one swipe of your brush. And then maybe I like to build it up with my finger to really get the oils of my fingers to interact with the shimmer and build up the shine. That's what I tend to do. With this, I need 3 layers with a brush, and then I can go in with a finger, and then I feel it still looks sheer. So is it okay? Is it good enough quality for the price point? Yes, I'm not gonna knock it down for that. But given that they're trying to like dupe these more high-end palettes, and especially how I feel this brand has been talked about within the beauty community, especially by people who haven't tried the higher end palettes sometimes, I don't feel this holds a candle to the original Nouveau. The original Nouveau, I go in with my brush once, whether it's a matte or a shimmer, and I get the intensity I need straight away, and still it's very blendable. With this, I feel the shadows can sometimes grab onto certain things, especially with what I'm wearing today, but we'll get to that in a minute. And as beautiful as the color story is, because it's not unique, I cannot rate this very highly because I already have the original. I think I like the greens in this one a touch better than I do in the Nouveau, because these I feel are a little less saturated, which is why they pull more cool tone on me than the ones in the ABH, which have a little bit more of a warmer quality, I would say. In this palette it worked out, but as we will see in a minute, it also doesn't always work out for me. Then the Alter Ego Coastal palette is a dupe for the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz, which is one of my all-time favorite palettes. And this again comes really close, but it's the shimmer quality that lets this palette down. While they are beautiful, the only shade I didn't use was the Putty shade, because I don't use that one in the Huda Beauty either. This comes close, but I just feel that the shimmers in the Huda Beauty have this really wonderful ethereal quality to them, whether they're a duochrome or a straight up shimmer, that this didn't quite have. So that's why, and I did 3 looks with this to be able to use all 18 shades here. I just felt that, again, like with the Midsummer, the mattes were okay. Again, they needed a little bit more building up than I perhaps wanted to. And the undertones in this one are a little less noticeable because it is a cooler tone palette, so it goes with my complexion pretty nicely. And I felt that, for instance, these warmer tones that the original also has, they pull more pink on me in the Huda Beauty palette than they do here. These ones I felt had more brown to them, and they pulled warmer than I remember the Huda Beauty to be doing. So I definitely think that this, in terms of undertones, doesn't quite deliver what the original does. But finally, the palette I bailed out on the minute I just did this one look with it is the Goddess palette by Alter Ego. This is a dupe for the now discontinued Natasha Denona gold palette, but of course she came out with the Yucca earlier this year, which I kind of feel is like the midi version of the gold now, but I haven't seen anybody comparing that, because I'm almost inclined to buy the Yucca palette just so I can do the comparison, because I still have my gold palette, because it's the palette that made me fall in love with Natasha Denona. And the minute I put this on my eyes, I was like, no, this doesn't even come close. And the look I did, and that's what's on my eyes today, is the mustard yellow, because that's my favorite shade in the Natasha Denona palette for a crease. I used this as liner, and on the lower lash line, I also used the other blue shimmer. I used this one all over the lid, and then I think, yeah, a little bit of this this shade here in the inner corner. This is also one of my favorite shades in the Natasha Denona palette. And here you can really see that the undertones don't match the original, especially because the Natasha Denona gold is already quite one note in terms of like what some of the browns have to offer. In this palette, it's even more noticeable how they're just exactly the same. Like, we didn't need both of these. We just didn't. But what I also found very surprising is that in the Natasha Denona gold, we essentially get 4 things that pull a little bit more green toned. You get the teals, you get this like chroma shade, and you get that one. But this one looks like a yellow. It looks like a yellow. The mustard yellow isn't mustard. It was just a yellow. It was just a murky yellow. It didn't have enough of the green that the Natasha Denona has, in my opinion. This is far more warm tone neutral than the original gold, which has that grungy quality if you mix some of the green tones in with the brown tones. And this doesn't really get to that level, in my opinion. It just feels a little less unique, and the remarks I had about the other Alter Ego palettes with mattes being okay and shimmers being a little lackluster, I feel was amplified even more with this because that mustard yellow took ages to blend out. There were parts of it that pulled darker where the shadow caught on and then I could barely blend it out, and I really had to layer it, and it became so yellow that it's something that I'm not remembering the Natasha Denona to ever do, for it to be this yellow and not this like grungy, murky in-between shape that I remember the original to be. So does this come close? Yes. Are these good alternatives if you really don't have the budget and you want the look for less? Yes. But quality-wise, I feel that they really don't come close to what some of the higher-end versions of these have to offer. I think that you're still better off paying what these go for, especially because some of these palettes have been around now for a little while. So Black Friday is just around the corner. If you can get a deal somewhere, maybe buy the original during a Black Friday sale. It would still be more expensive, but you will get better quality makeup. And these, I haven't spoken about this, but if you've ever smelled cheap makeup, I remember back, we don't have this store anymore, but we used to have this like Five Below kind of like dollar store kind of thing, and they would sell a lot of W7 products, and I had a couple of those palettes very early on in my makeup journey, and the smell of these palettes reminds me of W7, which is still around, by the way. I can still find it online, but they also do a lot of dupes. So yeah, is this okay? I think especially if you're starting out in makeup and you just want to try different color stories and see what it looks like, then I think these can be really nice starting points. But if you were asking yourself the questions, are these the same as the original, then I feel quality-wise and also sometimes undertone-wise, there's a reason why the higher-end ones work a little bit better for me. But for instance, in the case of the Midsummer, I find it works a little bit better for me than the ABH one. So yeah, I thought before going into this review that maybe if I like these a lot, that I was gonna try and see if I could buy the Sakura palette, which is their dupe for the Natasha Denona Retro Glam. But now that I've tried this, I'm like, nah, I don't think I would find it worth it, because I know these are like instant declutters for me because I have the original palettes that I like a lot better in terms of quality. And that's why I don't necessarily need to keep these around. So these are probably going to be handed to friends and family by the time I declutter my collection again in the springtime. But yeah, I appreciate that they were able to send this to me and that I got to try them. Again, I think they're good for the price point. If I just look at them at face value, are these okay eyeshadow palettes and are they worth the money? Then the question is yes. But are they worth the money in terms of like being a good alternative to these more high-end palettes? I would say no. So it's a little twofold. And that's why we're gonna end on a high note, because I liked everything that I tried from Colourpop. I'm just gonna spoil it right away. I really enjoy my Colourpop palettes that I tried this month, so let me just get started. First up, I think this was also the first one I tried because I really wanted to see how this went, the Deja Bew. And if you already own the Going Coconuts or the That's Taupe, don't make the mistake I did. You don't need this, because this is like if Going Coconuts and That's Taupe went and had a baby, you get the Deja Bew. The That's Taupe is darker than this. The Going Coconuts is a little bit more warm tone than this. So I think that now that I have this, I think next decluttering round, I'm gonna have to rearrange my That's Taupe and pull some of these shades in, because some of these shades are better for me than what's in the That's Taupe, especially in the shimmer department, we get more cool tones, but this is more of a true neutral palette. It's not overly cool, it's not overly warm, but it's sort of towing that middle ground. And in the Going Coconuts, I felt there was like this rosiness to some of the shades, and this I feel goes more towards the browny, taupey gray vibes, which is why I really enjoyed it. I did one look with this, I think. Really stunning formula. The packaging is super cheap though, which is why I don't think I would recommend it for that, and that if I were to rearrange that taupe and I'm going to pull some of these shades into that this is the thing that's going to get decluttered, then I'll just put the shades that I want to keep into my that's taupe. I think that's going to work a little bit better. But yeah, this was wonderful. I really enjoy the quality, and this is a good one. The next palette is the Lavish palette, which was launched in April, and I haven't heard anybody giving a positive review to the Lavish palette. I feel differently though. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. And that's probably because I am so incredibly fair and because I have cool tones, so I can get away with this very blue periwinkle leaning palette that I don't think most other people can do. I think if you have a much warmer undertone than I do, you're not gonna like it. You really aren't. Is it going to be really incredibly deep and saturated and looking lovely on deeper skin tones? Also no. So I think that this palette is just catering to the needs of a very select group of people, and I happen to be part of that group, which is why I really ended up liking this. It's essentially, the name Lavish makes you think this is going to be a lavender palette. We also get lavender packaging, but they're periwinkles. If you go into it knowing that and you don't love a periwinkle blue on yourself, then please turn around, run away, and never look at this palette again. However, if you're one of the people who are like, oh, the Very Peri by Glam Shop, so sad that it went away because I would have loved trying that palette, try this instead. Or if you live in the US and Glam Shop is just out of reach because you need to pay all the shipping and handling fees, try this. Try this, because this is essentially giving me Very Peri vibes. The Very Peri has a couple of truer purples in. I feel that this is overall more blue heavy than that, but this is the lovely Colourpop formula. No, it's not super deep, so if you have fair skin, this is gonna work. This was stunning. I really enjoyed the look I did with this, and it looked really shiny and whimsical and ethereal, and I really enjoy mine. So buyer beware, it's not for everyone, but if periwinkles are your vibe and you have fair skin with a cool undertone, I think you might really enjoy this one. I need a haircut, people. I'm terribly sorry about the hair. I'm trying to fix it best I can, but it's not behaving itself today. Oh well. Then a palette that was a little bit disappointing to me when I got it home, and it's the Off Melrose. This is an older palette that Colourpop still sells. I've had this in my shopping bag like 3 times and then I didn't buy it. And this time I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet. I want to make sure I get free shipping and I'll just pop this in. So the Off Melrose, when I got it home, because Colourpop described this as cool toned. It's not cool toned. Does it have cooler tones? Yes. And is more of this cool toned than I had expected? Also yes, because this section especially looks like terracotta-y, but we get this here, and this definitely pulled cool tone on me. There are also some superfluous shades here that I'm like, why did we get those? This is also a little bit more cooler tone than I had expected. We get this like shifty shade in the middle, which is really stunning. This darker brown is really stunning. I didn't think the yellow tone gold was gonna work for me, but it actually looked pretty cool on me. And then this is a pressed glitter, and it's one that I didn't hate because it's got a lot of cool tone sparkle through it. So that works as well. I just, like, I didn't need the orangey, coppery things. Those were the only things I was like, nah, could have done without it. But yeah, is this a really nice neutral tone palette? Yes. Is it anything special? No. Does the new 1111 palette look essentially like this? It does. By now, Colourpop is just duping themselves. But yeah, I think the Off Melrose, I think I'm going to take the shades I like out of it and sort of create a new palette. Maybe keep some of the Deja Bew shades and put them in here and like disperse some of them over the That's Taupe. that may be something that I'm doing. But yeah, this one I think is just going to be one that's going to be pulled apart and it's going to be added to different palettes. Then this guy, the Petals on Point. Again, a palette that ended up in so many people's like worst palette lists. But again, like with the Lavish palette, this is not for anyone with a warm undertone and anyone deeper than my skin tone. It just isn't. This is really light. And now that I've used it, I'm like, is this what I wanted Natasha Denona Retro Glam to be? In terms of the pinks, yes. In terms of the greens, no. The biggest letdown in this palette are the two green shades. This looks like a white, but it's got a green cast. And this light minty pastel green was very chalky. I put it along the lower lash line so it looked okay, and it was really pretty for that sort of like twiggy pastel 60s moment. I liked it a lot for that, but I think I would want this shade to just be a little bit better. That's like the only downside here. But these pink tones, they were beautiful. The pinks in the Natasha Denona Retro Glam are warm tone pinks, which is the one thing I don't like about that palette, because everything is cool tone. We get cool tone browns, we get cool tone greens, because the greens in there are very gray heavy, but then we get warm tone pinks. I don't get it. This, we get cool tone pinks. This is just great. And then we just get some neutrals down the bottom that you can use to build up any look, this shade especially. Again, is this going to stay intact the way it is? No. Maybe I'm going to mix the Melrose with the Deja Bew and this and like create some different palettes with it. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with it, but this is really, really stunning, really pretty. This dark shade is dark enough to use as liner to deepen things up, and all the other shades are light enough to just work with my skin tone and those pinky tones. I'm usually not a big fan of pink, but these kind of pinks work well on me. And finally, the Pretty Please from Colourpop, and so many of you told me to get this, but it was out of stock around Black Friday, and then I was like, nah. And then I think it came back earlier in the year, and then it went out of stock again. I was like, I just couldn't get my hands on it because it was gone all the time. Did I need another rosy toned eyeshadow palette? Of course not. Of course not. But is this a really good one? It's a really good one. It's again very, very light as well. So I just feel that this Colourpop run for me was super duper successful because all of these palettes are so incredibly light and fair skin friendly. Could I have done without the warmer tones in the middle row? Yeah, sure. Is this like coppery shimmer pretty much identical to the one in the Melrose? It is. It just is. But these are more rosy purple leaning than anything else, so I did appreciate it. What I didn't love is that these three are Super Shock shadows. They are very difficult to pick up with a brush, so with an inner corner highlight kind of thing, it's okay, but if you try to layer these to put them all over the lid, it can just get a little bit messy, so I didn't love that. But overall, I really enjoy the color story. I love how light this is. I'm actually thinking that this may be a good travel palette. I have a trip coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm actually thinking of packing this, and then I don't really need to take any other eyeshadow with me. So yeah, this is lovely. I really enjoy the color story. The quality was good. I just wish that some of these shimmers were actual shimmers, and they weren't this Colourpop Super Shock formula, especially because they're in a palette like this. Colourpop Super Shocks are just known for drying out really quickly, and I think this is the first palette I've bought by Colourpop that actually has a Super Shock formula in like this. So I'm just really curious to see how long that's gonna last and how long it's gonna work. But yeah, so far this was super pretty, super ethereal and lovely, and just, yeah, this is definitely up my street. So those were all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried for the very first time in September. So I'm going to be trying some more new palettes again in October. I'm going to show you in my Shop My Stash what palettes I will be trying out. So if you want the full lowdown on what palettes will be reviewed, then definitely check out that video. That should be up in the next week or so. So yeah, if you want to know what's new and what you can expect from these videos as well, then I recommend watching my monthly haul videos where I show you exactly what I got new in and to try some of those things. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me today. today. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I hope it was helpful to hear my thoughts on all of these new to me palettes. Of course, they're not necessarily new to market, but they were new to me, so I love trying those things. And yeah, I hope you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!